Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us on today's podcast. On today's show, we have Eliza Quagliao with us, and she's here to share her tips and tricks on AI automation, everything automation. And we're going to be having a really great conversation today, and I can't wait to dive in. How are you doing today? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, my name's Eliza. I am the Business Development and Operations Coordinator at Online Optimism, a full stack marketing agency based out of New Orleans. In my day to day at my job, I do a lot of automating for our proposal processes and our new leads. And I also do a lot of the automation processes for our operations, so HR and onboarding employees.
Awesome, awesome. And how long have you been doing this?
At this agency, I've been here for a little over a year now. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. And I like to ask questions that are, going to help our audience and our listeners. So I would love to just dive right in. Like, what led you to be in this role? Why are you? Why? Let me ask that first question. What led you to be in this role?
So when I was in college, I had my heart set on being a lawyer, and then I ended up working with a lawyer for a little bit and decided that that was not the role for me. So I did a radical switch into marketing, and I ended up working as a specialist for online optimism. It's what we call our working interns at the company. And while I was there, I ended up my the CEO, he asked me, he was like, "Hey, what do you know about automations?" And I said, "I don't know much right now, but I can learn. I'm always down to learn new things." And he said, "Yeah, here, have at it, have fun, see what you can do." And I ended up really falling in love with what automation is and the art of automating things, because no matter what people like to say, it is in the end an art. It's something that you have to put a lot of really creativity and focus into, as opposed to some other processes in marketing that are really cut and dry. um and so I really fell in love with the way that I was able to do that logical sequence of events, and everything that I thought that was going to be fulfilling for me in the law field ended up being equally as fulfilling and a lot more fun when I was working in automations.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Okay, let me ask you. So, when you're doing your automations, right? What do you find the most intriguing about automating things? Is it the processes or is it the systems that you're actually using, like the software?
I It's mostly the processes. I started out by when I first got into automating and I was really new at it. What I really loved to do was I would have a piece of paper and I would have sticky notes, and I would do the good old fashioned where I would write down what information I had and where it needed to go, and I would draw arrows on my paper from where, like, to guide myself through the process of automating that thing. And that really led me to be really passionate about making sure that from one sticky note to the other, I had as few arrows as possible.
Hmm. And let me ask you, so do you get caught up in all the new automating tools that are out there now? Because I mean, I know for us, we're nonstop looking at new technology. How do you not get like overwhelmed with all these new shiny objects?
I I would love to say that I don't get overwhelmed, but I do. My rabbit holing down into a new tool or a new shiny toy that I've found is not a problem per se, but I do spend a lot of time whenever somebody's like, "Hey, have you heard of this?" and I haven't, I will spend hours the next day looking into the capabilities of it, looking into whether or not this is a good replacement, and looking into whether or not we should shift our entire agency over to this new software. Um, I to If I were to give my younger self some advice, I would say to really look into, first, when you find that new piece of software, you should look into how it automates with your current tools that you're using. Like, don't look in to see what future problems it can solve. If it can't solve the problems that you're currently having, then it might not be a good choice, but keep an eye on it. Like, I have a running list of different automation softwares that I've looked at and I have decided weren't a great fit for the agency at the time. But I go back every so often to check and see if there is something new that they're offering that our current softwares aren't allowing us.
Yeah. And following that up with cost, right? I know a lot of the software for our audience may be cost prohibitive, so how do you determine what's the best use of resources when looking at software?
When looking at it originally, you always have to consider the startup cost. If there isn't a free tier or some way that I can test out how this is going to work for my agency, I don't tend to waste time on it, because if they're not giving you the chance to really look into how it's going to solve issues, then maybe it's not worth that startup cost at all. And so if my biggest thing is that if they don't offer a free tier, like I said, I don't waste time. And then when it comes to the actual cost of like credits or operations in the system, how much are you paying an employee to do the same thing? And how
Hmm.
many credits is it costing to do that in the automation software? And that's relatively easy math to do. With most softwares, they'll give you like, oh, you pay $20 per month and we give you 20,000 credits. And you do that math really easily to figure out if it's costing you more money to run the automation than it would to pay an employee to spend 30 minutes doing it, then maybe that's not what you should be automating, or maybe you should be looking into a cheaper platform.
Yeah, yeah. And how important do you feel it is to audit a business, to really understand the ins and outs of the business?
It The first thing anyone should do when starting to automate is audit their business. You should sit down and look at all of your processes end to end and look at where are you struggling? Where are you finding the hiccups and the I really hate doing this moments? Where are your employees struggling? Where are there roadblocks that you are having problem solving because you're working on other things? If you're starting, one of the biggest mistakes that somebody can make when starting to automate is just jumping right in and starting with some random automation that they think is going to solve all of their problems. It probably will solve that problem, but you're going to run into issues down the line when you start with those larger automations and then you have to go back and rework the earlier ones. And so, auditing the business and sitting down and looking at your processes is where you need to start, even if it means sitting down with sticky notes, a piece of paper, and a pencil and drawing out that process.
Mm. And tell me, what are your top software tools?
Uh, Zapier or Zapier, however you say it, is my personal favorite right now. They have one of the largest app libraries. And when it comes to no code or low code automation, having those built in integrations and that trust with the systems, Zapier is, there's no comparing it to other softwares. There are younger softwares like Make that I really love because my brain doesn't work as linear as Zapier wants it to. And so Make, with the more drag and drop module situation that they have, is a little bit easier for conceptualizing those processes for me. And then there my last software isn't actually a real software. It is the concept of automating without an automation software and using things like app scripts and Google Sheets to power things that you wouldn't necessarily be able to do in a software, or things that they would charge you an arm and a leg to do in a software.
I'm glad we're down this road. So I know we had an awesome conversation before about Make and Zapier and all of those things. And, I want to just jump in really quick and talk about low code or no code automation. So a lot of people throw those things around, and it's not really no code or low code, because Zapier is not the easiest tool to use to automate things. But once you know, right? Because then it becomes easier to create those things. And I'm glad that you said that if it's a more linear way of looking at things, right? Can
Yeah,
you get into what that means exactly? Like, what is a linear way of looking on it as compared to like an automation tool like Make?
in the interface of Zapier, you start with a trigger and then you have all of your steps that follow. And in the interface, it is your module and then the next one and then the next one and then the next one. And there's no way really to have things branching off outside of building those branches. And so Zapier forces you to look at things in a step by step fashion in a straight line. Versus things like make doesn't have that same trigger and then action. Any step in make can be the first step. Any trigger can be placed anywhere. And it gives you a lot more freedom to play around with. And in Make, you can run any module just by itself. And in Zapier, on the other hand, in order to run something, you need a trigger and you need to publish it. And it really forces you to think about. In Make, I like to say that if I'm doing something in bulk, I'm doing one huge thing where I'm moving a lot of stuff from one place to another and I'm never going to do it again. The first place that I go to is Make. But if I have a recurring step by step process that I like to do or I'm trying to automate, I go to Zapier first.
Yep. Yep, I can definitely see that, and I'm glad that you said that it takes like a creative mind to be able to really, because you really have to think through all the steps in the business, and it's really hard when you're in the business, right? So if someone were starting and they're trying to audit their business and think about, okay, what are the things that I do on a day-to-day basis, what would be the first step for them?
This is going to sound so crazy. First step, get a clipboard manager like Flycut and then set the settings for how many pieces of your clipboard it saves to as high as possible. And then at the end of the day, go back through everything in your clipboard. If there's one thing or one tiny piece of information that you've copy pasted 1 million times, that's where you should start in your audit. That is where you know that you are doing something that the automation software can do. And then after you've reached that point where you're starting your audit with your copy paste situation, then you can expand it to, okay, what does the rest of that process look like? I was copy pasting the password from here to here several times. What am I doing after that? What am I doing before that? Where am I stopping to get approvals from my employees? What Those are the questions that you can ask after you've identified your starting point.
Oh, yeah, your cat just made an intro.
Yeah. We have a little
Awesome.
guest star today.
Hi. Awesome. I love that. I love that workflow. I think it's a really great way to start, a really great way to look at it. For larger companies, a lot of the pushback, I'd like to say pushback that I've gotten when speaking to someone and saying, hey, listen, I think you should automate a lot of the processes. They're like, oh yeah, no. These are the things that we've been doing and they're working. And then the next 5 minutes you hear, oh, I can't stand that we do it this way. For larger companies, how easy is it for them to go in and automate? That's the first part of the question. And the second part is, if you are working with a large company, large team, right, where they have several people doing several things, like how would you audit that?
For larger companies, I think where you need to start in general with automations and the audit is go team by team. Go, if you have several teams, especially if you have one of those teams that's like, we've been doing it this way for years, we don't want to change it, this is working, and you're getting that pushback from the employees on that team, look at other teams. Look and see if there's a different part of the company where you can start where you're not going to get that pushback. Because if the employees aren't happy with the automation and the testing process and the implementation process is going to be rough for them, you're not going to see the benefits from it. They're just going to give you so much pushback that it's not going to, in the end, be worth it. And so for larger companies, if you have one of those teams or you have that set of employees that's not really open to the idea, but you have another team that's having similar issues or another team that is a prime candidate for the automations, start there instead and see if they would be more open to it. And once that team that was giving you the pushback sees the success and sees the increase in productivity that this team is getting from these automations, then they're going to be more open to it. You can also start in the leadership of a company. I've noticed that leadership, they send a lot of emails, they're doing a lot of managing. spreadsheets and budget charts and all of that stuff, if you can start in the leadership and work your way down instead of working in your employee teams and working your way up, they're going to see, like I said, they're going to see the benefits, they're going to see the productivity increase, and they're going to be more open to the changes in their processes. But automation is not always a smooth road. It's not always something that, like, you click a couple buttons and then all of a sudden this whole thing happens. Sometimes you spend days or even weeks testing and implementing and realizing that it doesn't work, rolling it back, retesting, re-implementing. And that is one of the, I mentioned that automation is an art. Sometimes an artist just has to throw away their canvas. And so if you're a larger company, then you need to think about how the implementation process is going to affect your employees, especially if you have fulfillment teams versus business development teams, or your HR team versus those fulfillment teams. And so I would say for larger companies, start with getting a pulse on your employees with your audit. Start with seeing if there are employees that are frustrated enough with your current processes, or if there's an employee that's been hearing about automations on podcasts like this and was like, oh, that sounds really cool. I wonder if we could do that here. And go to them and say, okay, let's try it. Or if you start your audit and you realize that all of your employees are completely happy with how their systems are going, then start in leadership and go from there.
I love it. Love it. And on the flip side of that, for companies that are just starting, they have not, they have this idea in their head. They're looking at starting a business, and I would say automate from the beginning. Tell me what you would say and what how you would set up if you are starting it from scratch
In a smaller business,
in a smaller business. So they just, came up with the idea. They're starting their business. They just got it registered. What is the first thing that you would set up?
if you don't have an established set of systems, you should look at what you're not going to want to do as a business owner, as a business operator, and figure out what automation platforms are best for that thing. And so if you are a little bit more comfortable with code and you think that Make might be a better option for most of your systems, then you can look at what systems are already integrated within Make and you're not going to have to build webhooks and API calls for. And then start there with your, okay, so we're going to go with this CMS because this CMS is already integrated with Make, and start building your systems from there. If you already have your systems in place and then you're starting to automate, then I would say, like I said, just start with what you don't want to do. I personally hate typing emails. And so the place I would start is going to be, how do I automate it so that I have to type as few emails as possible? Even if that means that I'm reviewing things sent to me by the automation. I've had an automation in the past send the emails to me first. I read them, I edit them, I send it back, and then that email gets sent out.
Yeah, yeah, and even now, if you have emails, so if you have like an established business, you have emails in there. There are automations where they can read the emails that you typically send, the format, the words, and that can be automated because a business owner typically gets a lot of repetitive questions asked, thrown at
Oh
them
yeah.
by team members, by clients. That's a great place to look at, like, where can I automate that conversation?
And if you're comfortable with it, there are um Zapier, for instance, has a really close relationship with OpenAI. And so if you're not looking to spend, like, there's a lot of email tools out there that will automate your emails and write your emails with AI for you and then send them out. If you're not looking to spend money on an automation platform and an email manager and this and that, then you can look into, like I said, Zapier has a really close relationship with OpenAI and they have their built-in AI tools that will do everything that AI email manager that you would otherwise have to pay additional money for would be able to do. It just takes a little bit more work to set it up than it would be to just get that email manager, but you're saving yourself some money and it's a lot more customizable to how you want to sound in your emails.
Yeah, Yeah, and you know what, I'm gonna just say too, right? Once you get into the thick of running a business, you really don't have a lot of time. And a lot of entrepreneurs always say, "Well, I don't have the time to sit down and automate things." But I'm gonna say you don't have the time not to. So you don't know what you don't know. So you don't know that you're saving so many hours by automating things. And I just want you to give like a simple example of one of those scenarios that could save like maybe 3 hours out of a day.
At Online Optimism, we have the most used automation at, we call it the new lead research. And when a new lead comes in and we're starting the process of doing our discovery and setting them up to potentially become a client, in the past, we would have to get the email, make a new Slack channel, write a message, make a bunch of folders in our drive, make a bunch of documents in our drive, do all this research on who they are, put it into the document, share it with the person, go over it with the person, and then schedule a meeting. And that would take anywhere between, for some leads, it would take like 30 minutes. And for other leads, it would take, like you said, like 3 hours. And I spent probably maybe about 10 hours automating total. It wasn't, like I said, you have to go through the process of like figuring out how you're going to automate it, actually building the automation, testing and stuff like that. So maybe about 10 hours I spent, and we've used it for 6, 7 months now, and it has saved so much time because now when a new lead comes in, all we have to do is fill out a form and all of those documents get generated, all of the messages get sent, some of the research gets done automatically, and we can spend all of that time that we would have spent doing all of that housekeeping, reading the message and going to the meeting.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. We've been tasked with automating some systems for clients, and even automating their phone book, even automating their contacts. Like I can't remember the person's name or whatever, but I remember what they were wearing. Like simple things like that. You know, um, a lot of people don't understand how many different automations are out there, how many tools, how many people are building automations, right?
Right.
Are you in a lot of Discord channels and looking at different automations and workflows that people are creating? Or like where are you finding like other people in the same industry that are doing the same things to like bounce ideas off of?
I am not in a ton of Discord channels, but I am a professional Reddit lurker. I should have a degree at this point in looking at what other people are doing on Reddit. And I would say to get that inspiration, Discord is great. Reddit is better. Reddit, you have this whole backlog of people and what these people are doing. And if you really spend the time, you can go into, like, Zapier has their own subreddit, Make has their own subreddit, and you can go into these subreddits and scroll through and see what other people are doing, what problems other people are having, and how to solve them. And that is where I think Reddit comes into really handy because there's pretty much nothing gets deleted. If somebody deletes their account on Reddit, the posts stay up and it just shows deleted. And so you have this backlog of problem solving and conversation that you can really use to help fuel your own results. And Reddit and Google have that their whole thing that they've got going on right now. And with that, you can use the Google's AI overviews, or you can use ChatGPT to ask questions about the platform you're using, and it's going to go look on Reddit. So if you are spending time typing in these questions into ChatGPT or Google, you may as well just go type them into the Reddit search bar because they have their own, it's in beta right now, but Reddit has their own like AI answers overview situation coming out. And so I would say to get inspiration and get help, go to Reddit.
Awesome. Awesome. Question for you. Do you use Airtable?
I do not use Airtable. I'm not an Airtable person right now.
Really? Really? So
Really?
you're using a lot of Google Sheets?
Yes.
Oh, tell me about it. Dive into Google.
So Google Sheets was not a decision that I made. The Google Suite was the workspace that Online Optimism had decided long before I showed up on the scene. And so I adapted to it. But Google Sheets combined with the native app scripts on the platform, if you have even the smallest amount of coding knowledge, I wouldn't recommend this for somebody who has no idea what, like, can't even like do like print hello world or something like that. But if you have even the smallest amount of coding knowledge, like you took a computer science class in high school, go on Claude. Claude is my preferred tool, AI tool for coding,
Really?
and ask it, say, hey, I've got this sheet and it has this information on it, and I want it to look like this at the end, and generate an app script to do that for me. And Claude will put out an app script, and all you have to do is press a button. Sometimes you don't even have to press a button. I've set it up where I can check a box on my sheet and it will automatically archive a bunch of information into a different sheet for me and send it over. You can build generators for tasks lists. Um, and if you don't have that coding knowledge, if you can't, I don't recommend vibe coding with Claude without that background information. But there are a lot of built in formulas in Google Sheets. My favorite are concatenate and workday. Those functions make it so that you don't have to have the coding knowledge. You type in the equal sign and a couple of letters, and Google Sheets will pop up with a help box to show you these are the formulas that you have available. This is the information that they need, and this is how you use it. And it's super easy to learn, and it's super easy to get the export into whatever like file format you need, and it's free. That's the best part. You don't have to pay a dime to use Google Sheets. You don't have to pay a dime to use those formulas. You might have to pay a dime or two to use Claude, but the basics of learning it are completely free.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's like Excel on like times 10, the abilities that these softwares have.
Mhm.
I love it. I love it. And what other hidden gems have you found within automation? Like, is there anything else in beta mode that you're like, ooh, watch out for this?
Right now, I would say that there's a lot moving around in the automation world. I've been really focused on Make switching, like we talked about this
Yeah,
last time, where
yeah.
Make is switching or switched from their previous payment plan to their
Hmm.
credits and how that works. So I've been really focused on that. So I'm not super in tune with the newer platforms right now. I've seen Relay app on Reddit recently. I think their founder is actually on Reddit marketing for the platform right now, which is really cool. I love when companies market on Reddit. But Relay app, I have been kind of keeping an eye on. I haven't looked at it yet, but as soon as I get a better handle on what the credit switch is meaning for our company with Make, then I'm probably going to start looking into Relay app.
Yeah, 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 yeah. You know, it's always fascinating to see what everybody is looking at. The reason why I asked about Airtable before is because Airtable has a mode that's in beta. It's coming out where you can upload all of this content and it will now generate tons of variations of that same content in different languages. It's in beta. It's
Ooh.
phenomenal. Like, sometimes there's so much technology that I feel like I'm like geeking out over it because there's so much AI automation. It's funny because I did not start in this arena. Definitely started more in the design, but it's such a creative venture to see A, what people are doing, you know, B, how they're using automation day to day, and C, how it can help people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds fantastic. I'm going to have to look into that because we often at Online Optimism are running into issues with having content that we want translated into those languages, and we're translating by hand right now. But I'm going to have to look into Airtable. You may have changed my mind on that one.
That is, I must say, one of the greatest things, right, with like signing up for the different software. So there's an email address where I just sign up for software so that I can see what's new and what's coming, just to get information on it, and I think it's important for entrepreneurs to, look into different platforms, but you don't need to actually join every one of them, but like, even their newsletters, just so that you can learn more to see how it can apply to your business.
I
Yeah.
completely agree. And I know that there's at least a couple of newsletters out there that aren't necessarily from the platforms, but you can sign up for newsletters that are just like marketing news.
Right.
And eventually they're going to catch on to the automation trend. I haven't gotten too many emails about it just yet, but
Yeah, and it's so funny, I think because we're in this automation space and automation world, we probably hear more about what's happening in AI or what's happening. I wonder if you're not in this space, if your feed still shows you all of this stuff. Like, if for me, I find that AI kind of consumes a lot of my time in terms of what I see online, what's shown to me on social media, because that's the space I'm in. I wonder if you're not in that space, what you see as it pertains to automation and AI.
I would also be really interested to know one of my favorite tools that I've discovered recently in terms of marketing news is it's called Swipe Insight. It is a completely free newsletter powered by AI, but it pulls information and news releases from a bunch of different tools like Google, and it gives you a little summary and then a link to the original article. My favorite part, completely ad free. You're not seeing a bunch of those like pushy pop up ads. They do make money somehow, and I think it's through like lightly sponsored posts, but Swipe Insight has been my favorite way of like keeping my eye on just what is evolving right now in the marketing world. I haven't seen too much on the automation side yet because I'm more signed up. They have like focus groups.
Hmm.
I'm more signed up for the AI focus group, but I'm wondering if eventually the non-AI focus groups are going to start seeing that automation information as well.
Right, right. I wonder. I really, really wonder, And another thing that I see often is coffee. And I know we were talking about that. Just want to segue into another one of our passions and loves. So we were speaking and you were telling me about all the different things that you keep you awake, or is your love for love for coffee. Tell me a little bit about that.
I spend a lot of time interacting with coffee. When I was in college and high school, I was a barista just to make a little bit of money on the side. And in that, I found that making coffee and the process of learning all of the different methods to prepare, it's similar to all the reasons that I love. Sorry about that. Similar to all the different reasons that I love automation. There's so many different ways to make a perfect cup of coffee, and you can ask 5 different people and they will all tell you something different. There's the French press, the pour over, the Chemex, the espresso people, the hand pressed espresso people, the cold brew people like myself. And then there's the people that love coffee and never make it themselves, which is also an option. So, how do you take your coffee?
I take my coffee black. If it's in the French press, then I will probably add something to it. But if it's just a regular, brew, then I will have it black. When you French press it, I feel like it's so rich and so awesome, but that richness is also a little bit bitter. So at that point, I add something to it.
Are you like a bean person? Do you just get your where do you source your beans from?
Oh, so good question. So I love Jamaican black coffee. I like the beans. So when I get those, they're pretty expensive. So only when I get them, I will grind the beans. Other than that, I'll buy it already ground and go from there. But yeah, that is my coffee experience.
If you really like Jamaican beans, then you and you're experiencing bitterness in your French press, then you should look into beans with marked with natural process. So beans sourced in Jamaica and other like central-ish American, that area of the world, those beans sourced from there are usually wet processed beans. Natural process is more popular out in like the African region of the world, and those beans tend to be a little bit sweeter because they're left out to dry with their shells still on them, and all of the natural sugars infuse the bean, and the natural processed beans tend to be a little bit sweeter and less bitter.
Wow. This is phenomenal. So not only are you like a automation enthusiast, like your coffee.
I do spend a lot of time making coffee.
Wow. Yeah, it's to stay up to automate stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm sure people don't even understand how long it takes to automate. But tell me, for your cup of coffee, like what's your favorite blend?
My favorite blend right now is a natural process Costa Rican. So I know I mentioned that the natural process is more popular with African beans, but you can get natural process from South American beans. Um, it's a Costa Rican natural process that I get from a coffee shop near my house that also does their own roasting. And I grind it and I cold brew it with dried banana. And when it comes out, it is this beautiful, lightly sweet, almost sangria note situation with the banana and the sweetness. And it is my favorite thing. I am so obsessed with it. And if you haven't tried cold brewing coffee with dried fruit in with the coffee, then you are missing out. It's like a Roman bath. You haven't lived until you've tried it.
Wow. Wow. You know what? You're gonna have to share that. You're gonna have to share like how to get that done. That sounds phenomenal. I have to try it.
I'll send you an email after this with the recipe.
For sure. For sure. For sure. Awesome. Well, let me ask you, is there anything else that you want to share on here about automation that you feel like our listeners must get?
I think I've touched on this a few times already, but the testing process and the actual process of automation can be extremely tedious. It can
Mhm.
be frustrating. There have been times that I've been automating stuff and I've just quit. I've just been like, I'm going to go work on something else and do something else because I cannot handle this right now. And that is just going to be part of the process. It doesn't matter how well you plan or how well you audit or how easy other people say it is.
Mhm.
Unless those people have been working in your systems with your data, they don't know how easy it should or should not be.
Right.
And the biggest thing is just if it's not working and you're frustrated, step aside and then don't touch it for a while or come back
Mhm.
later with a different point of view because maybe you're just looking at it the wrong way. And it doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. It just means that the automation needs something different than what you're giving it. And so don't give
Mhm.
up is my big thing.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. It does get time consuming. And it depends on the size of the build for sure. That definitely makes a difference in terms of what happens, what the outcome is, how long it takes, and there's so many different elements. But once it's done, the beauty of automation is once it's done, you don't have to go back to it.
Oh, yeah.
That thing is done.
And maybe if you are dealing with like a huge build, there's a chance that you can break it down, automate a smaller process within that larger process, and then just keep adding on to it. That
Mhm.
automation I mentioned earlier with the that's saving us like 3 hours, there are now like at least half a dozen little mini baby automations that feed off of the results of that one big automation that I spent 10 hours on. And
Wow,
so
that's
now I
awesome.
spend an hour and just tack on an additional functionality and tack on like, oh, I want HubSpot to also record a deal. Let me just go add one step to this automation because the rest of it's already done. The information's already there.
Mhm.
And so I guess that is one more tip. Zapier, like I mentioned before, has this thing in their system called Tables by Zapier, and it stores information from every single automation that I've run that I've connected to the table. And so if you're having trouble getting information into and out of the system, look into see if there's an automation system that works for you that stores the information for you. And then you don't have to worry too much about how you're going to get that information in and then back out because it's all in there and you don't have to pull it back out.
Mhm. Mhm. I agree. I agree. I love it. I love everything that you're sharing. I know that our listeners are going to get a lot of value out of it. Eliza, let me ask you, how can they find you, get in touch with you if they want to hear more or learn more about automation?
The easiest way is just going to be to send me an email. I know I said I hate writing emails. I do still hate writing emails, but I will write anyone an email anyway. My email is going to be eliza@onlineoptimism.com. You can also reach out via the Online Optimism website, or LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. But like I said, the easiest way is going to be sending an email.
Awesome. Awesome.
Unfortunately for me.
Listen, I get it. I get it. I get it. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure to have you on. I look forward to having more conversations with you. Everyone, thank you so much for listening. It
Yeah,
was
thank
great.
you so much. This has been a pleasure, and I will send you that coffee recipe, and you have to let me know how you like it.
No, absolutely. For sure.
All right. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you.